Let's get to him.
Dan Lebowitz is the executive director of the Northeastern University Center for the Study of Sport and Society. Hey, Joe, see the guy with... Say hello to him.
The guy with a head like mine.
Yeah,
He's trying to be a twin brother.
We're going to go to the bullpen. We want the right-hander.
Yeah.
Okay?
We
want the right-hander to come in from the bullpen. And by the way, great crowd here at the Knobscott Cafe in Framingham. Come on down. I'm staying to watch the Patriots because the Patriots do play the Chiefs. And you know what? This is going to be the first game all year I'm going to get to watch from start to finish. Dan, good to see you. Jimmy Myers, Dan Lebowitz. Have a seat, Dan.
Jimmy Myers is a legend.
Come on. You think? How do you think I feel? I'm between two legends.
Just me.
All right, you're good. This is a very sensitive microphone, so anything you say will be fine. You can't see it, but it's there.
I can't see it. Thanks.
That's right. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry. Just talk.
Is this the setup
they can see you.
Yes, and then you just
pretty much.
Glare the light.
We don't have to worry.
You. That's
we don't have to worry about this. We don't have to worry about anything because this is our channel.
That's nice. I'm glad to see. So I'm honored that you invited me.
No. Look, you and I have been trying to get together for a long time. You've always been a big supporter of what I've done, and everything I've done I've owed to this guy. I don't know if you know that, but I was his... what do we need? We need him to get closer to the microphone. Is that what we're saying? Okay, there we go. How's that? Is that better?
Super sensitive.
It is
Next
super
thing you know,
sensitive.
they can't hear me.
Well, no, I just want to make sure that everybody's... Nobody has any problem hearing me, Dan.
Hey, what can we do about the light?
Nothing. You don't want to do anything about the light.
No. Come on.
No.
Because you won't see me then. So, sorry, brother. You got to deal with this. Okay?
It's all right. I can handle that.
I know you can.
We are twin brothers, different mothers, although you guys could absolutely do the same thing.
Yeah, you know.
Dan,
I like his haircut. He's smooth. Leave him alone.
All right.
There aren't too many guys that can wear this style.
Right.
All right.
That's right.
Thank you.
We've been beating up, bad pun, but that's exactly what it is. How the NFL has handled the whole situation with the tape and all this. But let's talk a little bit about the Sport and Society Center at Northeastern University, what you do there as executive director. Jimmy and I are both friends and familiar with Richard Lapchick, who was the founder of it, along with Tom Sanders, if I'm correct, right? Tell us about what you do and what the center does, and then we'll kind of segue into some other
Well,
things.
at the center right now, even though we call ourselves the Center for the Study of Sport and Society, we do, in fact, engage in a lot of things that have to do with athletics. The interesting part of the center is that we use the common ground of sport to create dialogue and conversations that people normally wouldn't have. And so when we start thinking about our world, I think two things stand out. And even in this NFL issue, I think there's two things that stand out. One is that there's a major gender disparity in the world, and there's also a major racial disparity in the world. And I think that the disenfranchisement of women worldwide and the disenfranchisement of populations, particularly African-American populations in our country, despite the fact that we have an African-American president, people try to claim that we're in a post-racial world. And you see so much around this issue, and there's an awful lot of subsets about this NFL issue that have to do not only with the promulgation of gender violence and the oppression of women, but also sort of the undercurrent of racist tendencies that we have as a society. So having said that, what we do at the center is we exist in three primary lanes. One lane is that we're a primary prevention program for gender violence and other types of violence. So we work with law enforcement agencies, we work with pro teams, but basically we see ourselves as a community engagement engine that creates a dynamic where we create curriculum, policy curriculum, and facilitated dialogue that creates sort of a cognitive development among audiences about how to create positive social change. And that could be in the gender violence prevention realm, it could be in the gun and youth violence prevention realm, it could be in the sexual trafficking prevention realm, it can be in a number of things. So, of recent, the types of things that we've done on a national level or an international level, we delivered the gender violence prevention training at the World Cup in South Africa 2010. We actually did workplace conduct training for the NFL in 2010.
They could use a review course. Sorry, had to
that's fine.
Interject that.
We next week or the week after, we're doing the cultural competency training for the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're presently doing sexual assault prevention training for some military bases in Georgia, and we pretty much stay in those lanes. The third lane we have is really around how do you engage sport-based youth development entities around the world to engage in these larger conversations so that when we're teaching kids or when we're working with kids in athletic fields, in YMCAs, in the Boys and Girls Clubs, in a variety of great places like Dock Lane or other places in the city that are just delivering unbelievably great programming. How do you use that time and out of school time to create teaching moments and opportunities for not only for kids to learn, but sort of in our realm, we try to create a whole workforce development engine, because the disenfranchisement of kids around the globe, particularly people that haven't really had a seat at the table, how do we create a dynamic for them where they move beyond the psychosocial drama trauma that's been the drama in their neighborhoods that have created the trauma really for so long, because they haven't had opportunity. The greatest social justice issue on the planet is an opportunity and an access to education. How do we create it? How do we engage? And how do we engage people in understanding it on a much larger level?
It's a great answer, and such important work too. And I've always been fascinated by what you guys have created over there. You told me a couple of weeks ago when we were trying to get this together that the NFL had contacted you. Are you doing anything specifically with the National Football League now?
Well, we were in conversation with them. Actually, we reached out first on another issue. We had done with the NFLPA last year, the Players Association. We created an entire webinar around sort of what does positive youth coaching look like, and particularly what does positive youth coaching look like in communities of color. Again, because we pay a large attention to disenfranchisement and how to change what I would call social abnorms. And so we created an entire series, and we had some amazing people on. It's a webinar, it's a course, it's a positive coaching course. It's sort of a part of a coaching certification type process, and really we had people such as John Carlos from the 1968 Olympics was on the webinar. We had the new African American police chief in Boston, Willie Gross, an amazing individual and sort of the face of community policing in Boston at the moment. We had coaches from around the country. We had former pro players on it, and really, so we are constantly in contact with all leagues around how do we use their platform to move social justice and the pendulum of social justice forward in a way that's positive.
We're talking with Dan Lebowitz. He's the executive director of Northeastern University's Center for the Study of Sport in Society. Jimmy Myers, Jimmy Young, and Dan. I know Jimmy has a lot to say.
Yes, I do. Dan, as I look at this entire scenario of sport in society, I can't truly ask sports to govern society. I've got to ask the people that live in society on a day-to-day basis to deal with issues such as drugs, such as violence, such as racism, sexism, any type of ism. And I really think that it's unfair sometimes to dump all of that in your corner or any organization's corner. And to go further with that, why all of a sudden now does the National Football League have to come to you? And this has been a societal problem. Violence, domestic violence alone has been a societal problem since the beginning of this nation, our time, and whatever.
Well, let me clarify. They didn't come to us. We've been engaging with them for a long period of time.
Okay.
This is just a continued conversation. So
Okay.
I've had a lot of conversation with them. We did workplace conduct training for them in 2010. We did this NFLPA thing last year. To the credit of the National Football League, and a lot of people are missing this point, if you looked at organizations across the globe, major corporations across the globe, about 7 to 11%, depending on whose study you're using, have any type of domestic violence policy at all. And so the league wasn't dissimilar from entities in the political realm and the business realm and any of these other realms. What makes sport unique to sort of answer the question, or what allows our center the ability to kind of be facile in the space, is number one, everyone who delivers curriculum for us was a former athlete. Right? Either a Division I, an Olympic athlete, a pro athlete, but sport is a common denominator. So, you can have people that have varying views on race, varying views on religion, varying views on on politics, varying views on capitalism versus socialism, various views on a number of things, but they might all, look at how many people in here tonight are wearing a Patriots jersey. And so the common ground, that commonality, I try to think about it like a mathematical equation. You know, when you're doing algebra and you're looking for that common denominator, if you're multiplying fractions or you're doing whatever, right? You're looking for a common denominator so you can start a conversation. I don't find it unfair that people are turning to sport. I look around the globe. I look at the situation in South Africa, not a military embargo. I mean, not threat of not military action, not an economic embargo, not a number of other threats ever changed the sort of pendulum of what was this incredible, you know, oppression of apartheid. And yet,
Excuse me, please forgive me for interrupting you there, but Nelson Mandela did that. Sports had nothing to do with that. The impact of Nelson Mandela and what was going on in South Africa is much greater than sports to me. See, I've lived in sports my entire life, and I don't want to give sports credit that it doesn't deserve, Dan. Dan, did you hear me just for 1 second? I'm still saying we need to do this within ourselves. I don't need sports to tell me how to raise my kids. I don't need sports to tell me that I'm not supposed to be beating on women. Yes, and it is a common denominator we can agree on, but we've got to be bigger than that as a society. That's what I'm saying.
But conversations have to start somewhere. And so when you think about the center, what we do at the center is we don't legislate behavior. I think the reason that people come to talk to us is that our curriculum is set up in such a way, it's a playbook. We set up a playbook with various scenarios. And we might have a number of people in the room, and we go through that playbook, and we say, there's a scenario, and it's a particular scenario. What would you do in this situation? Now, there may be a number of options of that situation, but rather than telling people what they should or shouldn't do, we facilitate a conversation around what we let them talk so that the cognitive development is their own ownership. You know, people still have to be moved from one spot to another. If we are stagnant in a space where we have racism, where we have sexism, where we have ageism, where we have all these isms, and no matter what they are, if we're stagnant in that space and the status quo seems to either be the status quo or getting worse, how do you facilitate a conversation to move that pendulum back? And so for us, we live in that space.
I always feel that time and space will dictate what's going to happen within a society. That means from a historical perspective. I don't look at Jackie Robinson as much as I look at the black men and women that served in the military for all of the years that they did leading up to Jackie Robinson, or for all the wars that black people fought in to get us to where you could have a Jackie Robinson. See, I've loved sports all my life, Dan, and I've dealt in sports, but I deal in real life, and I'm always saying that the isms, as you just mentioned, they have to be within us to change them. And I don't care how many football games I watch or what impact sport is going to make on a society, that it's ever going to change until people change. Like you made a very good point about 7 to 10% of the companies were practicing the right thing or whatever. Well, we're the Harvards. We're the higher institutions of learning that should be teaching these things. They're practicing the same problems.
Granted, but if you think about the limited number of people that get an access to a Harvard, the limited number of people that get an access to these institutions, the NFL has an unbelievable platform. And so when you think about that platform, it's almost remiss not to use that platform for the conversation to move society forward. You know, again, getting back to that common denominator thing, and also to the facilitation of conversation thing, a thought process has to be motivated or moved somewhere. And so if everyone was just automatically introspective about understanding that skin color or religion or anything else, that really we're all just humankind, right? If people did that on their own, we wouldn't need to sort of move people one way or another in either a facilitated conversation or society forward in one way or another.
But my issue with the NFL or sports is the fact that it's the immediacy. They'll do it now because the light is on them. But as we go forward, you're asking a league to do something that society has to do. We still have too many racial problems in this country, too many too much sexism, too many other issues that I think This is so much bigger than sports. Women issues. We have to get better as people. And I'm not looking for some NFL player or a league or the NBA or an NHL.
Well, you're not, but a lot of
anybody.
people will listen to those guys, Jimmy, because of who they are. You may not like that, but that's what they do. It lends them to open up a conversation. And that's got to be the first step. Recognizing that there's a problem and then talking about that problem is the first step in anything to change.
There's at the end of the day, if you look at a lot of cultures around the world, so many cultures are moved by celebrity.
Right.
Now that may be something that we don't feel comfortable with. I'm an athlete. I'm running a center that deals with sport. My feeling is that if we don't find some ways to embrace intellectualism, we will never move society forward. And so if we have to use the vehicle of sport to engage people in the conversation of why intellectualism is important, or what we need to talk about and why we need to talk about them, or why is it that people don't engage in real conversations around race or gender equity or anything else. So we live in that realm where we're trying to engage people in those conversations that they aren't comfortable with, that people haven't really engaged in, that people seem afraid of because they're worried about the backlash. So if you look at this NFL incident, show me anywhere on the globe where people aren't more apt to be reactive than proactive.
You tell me in that vein is one thing, but I'm telling you, I live in a world where people come from all over this world to come here. I'm saying the problems of America, we still don't want to talk about race. No matter what you say about this or that or whatever, the biggest problem in this country, I always say, Dan, two things: race and class. Race and money. Those are the two central issues that black people deal with every single day of our lives. How we're going to be if we're stopped by the police. How we're going to be when we walk into a restaurant. Sports did not change any of this. A civil rights movement came and went. It didn't change as much as it should have changed. What I'm saying is that until we reach the point whereas the people, okay, you said that most times celebrity drives this. No, I have some presidents that made some very, very heavy, monumental decisions that changed the law. And they didn't need athletes to do it. They didn't need Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, those people to do it. They were pushed by a movement. Movements change things. Sports leagues don't change things to me.
When you look at culture today, when you look at the internet today, when you look at the vast contracts that even college football has today, when you look at reality TV today, when you look at what kids are watching today, I'm a guy that raised 5 boys and 1 girl.
Okay.
And multiracial, right? So I'm looking at that situation, their situation, and we used to have what we would call the breakfast of hope and the dinner of reality.
Okay.
And the breakfast of hope, you would voice what you would hope the day would be. The dinner of reality is how it played out, on the basis of your race, on the basis of your sex, on the basis of those things. But when I watch my kids, and I've watched them grow up in the culture that surrounds us, I know that celebrity drives a lot of what they do. I know that they're more in tune to what someone said on Love and Hip Hop than they are to what the president said in the State of the Union address.
Right. Hang on, Jimmy. Let him finish, and then I get to ask a question.
So when I'm thinking about that, I don't think to myself, oh, that's good, bad, awful, indifferent. I think, okay, as an educator, I want to meet people where they are and move them to where they and all of society needs to be. That's what I think of in terms of looking through that prism. How do I move them to the social change that we need to have around race conversations, around economic disparity conversations, around gender equity conversations? Jimmy Carter just wrote a great book, and it was called The Call to Action.
Call to Action.
And the book is amazing in that it shows just the unbelievable oppression of women around the globe, right? And much can be said, in this country around race relations. The same thing. We might want to turn a blind eye to it, but we know that that's true. And so as the country, as we start watching the browning of America, right, and we know that's happening, and if we believe, as I believe, that democracies around the globe, no democracy on the planet moves without capitalism. And no capitalism moves without consumerism. So if we've had Latino and African American populations that have been so disenfranchised from consumerism that drives capitalism, we're looking at a dying democracy. So I want to engage people in the conversation. If you believe that you're a capitalist and you say how much you love democracy, how can you stand idly by and watch so many vast portions of our society be disenfranchised and disempowered by not being able to engage in the consumerism that drives it?
Careful now, because you're starting to sound like me. Go ahead.
That's good. No, I
actually was going to say to you, we're not actually saying much different.
No. You guys are good, and I'm actually listening to it. And it's great.
Think of this.
Jimmy,
You
no.
mentioned 5.
Go
ahead, quickly. Go ahead.
Quickly,
Ask your
I get to quickly.
Ask your question.
Thank you so much.
Ask your question.
I actually want to go back to something he mentioned about 10 minutes ago,
Okay.
called the playbook. Because I remember the playbook. I had a copy of it back in the day when I had a show, and Don McPherson was working with the Sport Society group. And you quickly mentioned it, and it sounds great, but I really want to give people the understanding of exactly what are you talking about when you are talking about the playbook. And I know, for instance, you're at a party, you set the scene. You're at a party, you're an athlete, and you know one of your teammates has had too much to drink and he disappears with a female. What do you do?
So there would be a number of different scenarios
Right.
about what you would do, and it would gauge the group. And the groups really only work in segments of about 25 because that engages a good conversation. I can give you an example in another realm. We've mainstreamed the awful B word in our society. Talk about how much we oppress women on the planet. And so we might bring a team into the room and say, who thinks using the word B is okay? If you think it's okay, sit on the left side of the room. If you're unsure, sit in the middle. If you think it's not okay, sit on the right. Now we might have 90 players in that room. And so we continue to have a conversation. I might ask the people on one side, well, you think it's okay, so explain to me a scenario in which it's okay. The people on the side that don't think it's okay, I ask them why they would come up, what is it that makes them think it's not okay, and the unsure people I ask again. What you end up doing is try to move that conversation to an understanding where people start getting a feel of the word as it relates to themselves. So we try to create an empathy platform. What does the world look like from an African American eyes out? Not from your view of what an African American's feeling, but from that African American eyes out, or from a Latino woman's eyes out, or whatever. The conversation in the B phrase would be, maybe if we had a certain number of African American men in the room, I would say to them, when was the first time it was used in relation to a female in the United States? So if I slap up a sign that says 30 B's, X amount of dollars, now it changes the conversation for a lot of men that were comfortable using the word. If I change the scenario, and we could change the scenarios around race for whites, whatever. The bottom, or in
religion
a gender
too, I'm hoping.
Religion. The bottom line is we try to customize every single curriculum to the need of the entity. So if we're doing it for the military, we would have scenarios that relate to the military. If we're doing it for the NFL, it would be scenarios that would relate to the players in that room, their backgrounds, a variety of other things, what locker room culture's like. So at the end of the day, the conversation is, we're just asking a couple of questions. That's why we call it facilitated dialogue, because it lends itself to the cognitive development where eventually we're hoping they leave the room talking like Jimmy and I are talking.
Right. And now, Jimmy, I know I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to ask you this question.
I'm wondering why I didn't get offered a drink.
Wait.
No, I'm only kidding.
PJ, come over here. What would you like?
Can I get a soda water with a lemon?
There you go. Soda water with a lemon. See that? That's how you do that. You got to know people. You got to have a voice that projects.